Updates of situation in Ukraine on the 9th day of the war. And what is the military historian Professor Victor Hanson's answer to the following important questions?
How does he see state of the warfare right now, and why Putin decided to invade Ukraine at this time?
And what is the role of the U.S. energy policy in Putin's decision? And what is the relationship between CCP and Putin in this decision?
How does this war play into the Great Reset?
Welcome to Wei and Cathy show. I'm your host Wei Fang.
I'm Cathy Zhang.
Okay, so long time no see on the YouTube. Okay, we've been forced offline for 1 week. So during which that CPAC happened, so we did our broadcasting over on the Safe Chat, and now we're back on both platforms. Hello, everyone.
Good to see you again.
A lot of things are happening in the past 1 week, actually, so we missed all of you. Let's just try to do some catch up here, okay? So the war has entered the 9th day. In Ukraine, probably it's 10th day, okay? And the fighting remains intense in the central Ukraine as the Russian forces continue to bombard the capital Kyiv in the attempt to take the capital. But their miles-long convoy, basically 40 miles long convoy north of the city, still doesn't appear to be moving and has been there for 4 days. So when you see a convoy staying there for 4 days, apparently it's not doing its job, so they get stuck. This is actually logistic issues long known to the U.S. military experts, which Cathy and Wei interviewed in the previous few days, which we couldn't air it to you.
Yeah, but if you wanted to check it out, can go on to the Safe Chat platform. So the Russian forces reportedly captured a Ukrainian nuclear power plant, which is the largest in Europe. After a massive fire was extinguished, Ukrainian workers continued to operate the facility. No release of radioactive material has been reported.
The situation really grabbed the attention of the Europe and even the entire world. So the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield, said this at the Security Council Friday. And she said, by the grace of God, the world narrowly averted a nuclear catastrophe last night at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which the Russian forces attacked and started a fire. And she said, we all waited to exhale as we watched the horrific situation unfold in real time. I applaud the ability of the Ukrainian operators to keep all 6 reactors in safe conditions while under attack and to report as they were able to their nuclear regulator.
So in the meanwhile, a third round of talk between Ukrainian and Russian delegations is in the works, potentially as soon as this weekend. And NATO has refused Ukraine's request of establishing non-fly zone above the country. That would mean inevitably shooting down Russian airplanes, which equates to dragging NATO into direct military conflict with Russian military.
Russia's state-owned media RT closes U.S. operation and laid off more than 100 staff. Spotify, Meta / Facebook, Google, and YouTube have all banned RT and other Russian news outlets such as Sputnik in the U.S. While in return, Russian government is shutting down access to U.S. services in its own country, such as Facebook and Twitter.
And Russian officials also continue to shutter media outlets, now including BBC's Russian service, independent Meduza, and U.S.-funded Radio Liberty.
A new law in Russia threatens up to 15 years in prison for anyone deemed to spread, quote, false information, end quote, about the country's military and its activity. Other penalties target calls for sanctions against Russia and calls for not deploying Russia's armed forces.
So a number of international companies have ceased its operation in Russia, such as Airbnb, Google, Panasonic, Booking.com, Microsoft, Apple, Paramount, DirecTV, AT&T, Netflix, TikTok, Disney, and so on and so forth.
And the Secretary of the State, Anthony Blinken, downplayed the impacts on Russia would have, arguing any such sanction would hurt the America and its allies more than they would on the Moscow. So he refused to stop importing Russian oil, and more on that later.
Mm-hmm. So the United States has provided $350 million in military aid in the forms of weapons from U.S. stockpiles over the past week, bringing the total aid to Ukraine to roughly $1 billion over the past year.
And a new breakdown of that aid shows that the U.S. Compressed the process to provide the aid to just a matter of hours and days compared to the normal several months. And a U.S. Senior defense official said, you can see how fast we're moving to get security assistance on the battlefield. And he said, overall, officials remain very impressed about how Ukrainians are fielding those weapons. He said they are having a real impact.
And speaking at a news conference in Brazil on Friday afternoon, Stoltenberg said that Russian forces deployed banned weapons, including cluster bombs, and called the Russian invasion of Ukraine, quote unquote, a blatant violation of international law. And he said, we have seen the use of cluster bombs. We have seen reports of use of other types of weapon, which will be in violation of international law. He continued that, of course, NATO allies and partners are collecting information and are monitoring very closely what's going on in Ukraine. So the cluster bombs are effectively explosive that once deployed, open the air and release more submunitions or bomblets.
And then this week introduced the Republican legislatures this week introduced the Energy Freedom Act, which aims to bring the U.S. back to a place of energy independence. And a status President Joe Biden stopped upon taking office. Specifically, the legislation would work by, quote, accelerating federal permitting for energy projects and pipelines, mandating new onshore and offshore oil and gas lease sales, approving pending LNG export licenses, and generally speeding up solar, wind, and geothermal development, according to a senator's office.
However, the Biden administration has so far indicated no intention in making a move towards the above actions. So let's take a look at the gas price. It jumped 11 cents from the day before to average $3.84. That is as much as they rose in the entire week through Thursday. In a week ago, gas prices were $3.57. 57 cents. So Friday, today's gas price is 7.4% higher over the weekend.
Well, gasoline prices, as you know, move up while oil prices climb. And the gas price now are up 12% compared to a month ago and 40% compared to a year ago. And the price of the Western Texas Instrument crude oil, the best measure of the petroleum produced in the U.S., was at $115 a barrel on Friday, up from $92 a week ago and $76 at the start of this year.
Yeah, so see, in Silicon Valley, actually now today we see the highest price of the gas actually is about $6.39, which is in Menlo Park, close to the Silicon Valley. So NATO planners should develop plans focusing on exploiting Russian logistic challenges rather than trying to address the disparity in the combat power.
And this really has to do with the logistics issues, and which is another topic. I'm just combining them over here. Anyway, so next we're gonna just move to the interview of today.
Okay, yeah, so actually I just kind of announced in the last show that I was going to interview Professor Victor Davis Hanson, who is the military historian, classicist, and senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. So yesterday I did interviewed Professor Hanson, which also asked him quite a few questions, including some of the questions from you, our viewers. So I hope whoever raised the question is in the audience right now. So actually, we started the question is what is exactly the state of the warfare right now in Ukraine? So here we have Professor Victor Davis Hanson.
Yeah, I think this is one of the few wars of the last 50 years, going back to Vietnam, or the Balkans, or Iraq, or Afghanistan, or the Middle East wars, that we haven't had any information. I mean, we don't have a lot of journalists on the front line, so there's a lot of speculation and misinformation. But it seems to be that there are a lot of, that Russia's taken a lot of damage. But what hinges now is to what degree do the Ukrainians have sophisticated anti-aircraft Stinger missiles and Javelin. And it seems like we didn't give them any until Trump gave them only 500. But I don't know why the Ukrainians had not massed them in depots. So when the Russians came in, they did very well the first couple of days. And they exhausted their supplies, apparently. And now they have all of NATO scrambling the countries to send 10, 12,000 Javelins and Stingers and get them snuck into the country and then transported across it to the places where it matters. And so what we're watching is kind of a race. Will the Ukrainians get in their hands just an enormous amount of needed weaponry to stop these columns, helicopters, air attacks, tanks, or is it too late? We don't have the answer because we don't have accurate reporting. But it's very important because if they last another week or two, the momentum will be with them, and then the West will take confidence that their strategy of closing ranks in NATO and sanctioning Putin economically and fiscally will work, and supplying these new type of game-changing weapons that can destroy a tank at 2.5 miles from the top, no less. That's a good model. And of course, the Iranians are looking at this vis-a-vis their desire to destroy Israel, and the Chinese are looking at this, and they're out. Well, if we were to do to Taiwan what Putin did to Ukraine, would the Taiwanese fight like the Ukrainians? Would Australia and the United States and Japan, South Korea, would they pour Stingers and Javelins into Taiwan? Would the world sanction us like they did Russia? Would Chinese billionaires lose their yachts or air privileges, or Chinese citizens couldn't get ATMs with 350,000 students have to come home? So they're waiting too to see what the response of the West and whether Ukraine is predicate a lot about their decision-making vis-a-vis toward Taiwan. These are all amoral decisions, realist decisions. They're just based on the efficacy of the operation, whether it can be carried out quickly within a cost-benefit analysis profitably. But nobody has that answer yet, partly because the coverage is not good, but partly because we're in the middle of a war, and we're not sure if the supplies can arm the Ukrainians and they have enough people to know how to use them to stop the Russian column.
It's already into like the second week of the war, but he seems not really making a lot of progress, and the columns of Russian just lining up towards Kyiv, but not really able to make a lot of advancement. What do you make of it?
Well, he has a plan. We saw it in Georgia, we saw it in eastern Ukraine and Crimea. And that is, he feels that he will suddenly strike, he'll create pressure on the border. And then if the former republic does not capitulate, he at some date will swarm the border, try to decapitate the government, put in a puppet government, and get it all over in 2 and 3 days. And that worked in those prior 3 cases. It has not worked with Western Ukraine. And then when it doesn't work, he always has a fallback plan. And the fallback plan prior to this was Chechnya. It didn't work. So he brought in his heavy artillery and missiles, and he leveled Grozny, the capital. He basically destroyed the cities of Chechnya. And his thinking is that people will express outrage now and they'll sanction him and they'll refuse to buy their oil, but they will be confronted with a reality in a year that he took all of Ukraine and he absorbed it all, and he didn't care about the cost, and now he's more powerful, and he believes that Germany will reverse course and quietly buy oil from him, and NATO will quietly revert to course, and the United States will not pump more oil or deter him. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he's thinking, at least, and that explains why he's taking this enormous gamble.
Invade Ukraine at this time. What do you think?
Well, he's always ready to invade a former republic if it's in a cost of benefit analysis worth it. And there are certain conditions that make it worth it or not worth it in his perception. One of them is the price of oil. The oil is very high and Europe is very dependent on oil. The United States begged him to pump more oil while we deliberately cut back on oil. Second is that there's disarray in NATO. NATO's richest member, Germany, was willing to pay $1 billion almost a day, 2 days, if this pipeline agreement is finalized, and it seems to be almost finalized, or it was, and NATO was fighting over whether the people would even pay 2% of their annual budget on defense, so there was a lot of acrimony there. And then he looks at presidents. He looks at George W. Bush or Biden or Trump or Obama, and he decides whether they're loud and not going to do anything or can't do anything, or whether they're going to deter him. And they came to the conclusion that during the Georgia crisis, we were bogged down in Iraq and Afghanistan. Oil was high. Bush couldn't or wouldn't do anything, and he went into Georgia. And then during the Obama administration, he decided the same was true. Oil was high. Obama had been on an apology tour. He had the hot mic exchange he had in Seoul, South Korea, and he decided to go in. And the same thing, he didn't do it during Trump's period, but he did during Biden's. Again, Biden had begged him to pump oil. Oil was high. NATO was in disarray. And we hadn't done anything about Russian hacking. So he's opportunistic. His longer-term goal is to recreate Mother Russia, a Russian empire, sort of like Milosevic in the Serbian Empire, or Mussolini in the 1930s, new Roman Empire, or Hitler with a Third Reich. Anybody who speaks the language, the same religion, Russian religion or language, he feels has to belong in this large empire-centered Moscow. But he's not strong enough to get all of the necessary pieces at once, so he's very patient. He waits.
In terms of the sanctions, actually, it's from our audience. They want to ask you, do you think the U.S. would stop or, reduce the fossil fuel purchase from the Russians as one of the sanctions? And if that were to happen, when it's a possibility?
It's very odd that we were told that the Green Party in Europe, the plural parties, were so much more powerful than our left, and that they ran the European Union and the NATO countries. But lo and behold, all of the major leaders of the European countries, and particularly Chancellor Scholz in Germany, have completely repudiated the left. They've decided to create energy and not to buy oil and gas from Putin and to increase her. But our president hasn't done that. So I was expecting in the State of the Union for a very bold speech that said, let's get beyond politics. To save lives in Ukraine and to deter Russia and to stop their accumulation of petrodollars and to give the West liquefied natural gas, I'm going to do the following. I thought he would say, we're going to help the Israelis and the Greeks and the Cypriots finish that pipeline into Italy, which Biden opposed, that gas pipeline. I thought he would say, we're going to open ANWR, we're going to open new federal leasing for oil and gas. We're going to finish the Keystone Pipeline. We're going to give more incentives to frackers and horizontal drillers in the Dakotas and Texas. But he didn't do that. So it suggests that he's more captive to the American left than the Europeans are to the Green Party. I never thought that would be possible, but it is.
So how do you think actually the U.S. energy policy, could play an important role in Putin's making such decision?
Well, right now we were energy independent. We consume about 14 million barrels, and we were up to almost 14 million barrels. Now we're down to, I think, 11 or something, 12 sometimes. So if we could pump very quickly, I think, back up to where we already were, we would give the world an extra 3 million barrels. And if we were to start shipping natural gas, which we have even more than oil, I think within a matter of 6 weeks or 8 weeks, we could get the price of oil down below $100, and that would start to rob Putin of the enormous profits he's making. But more importantly, it would tell the Europeans, don't worry, help is on the way. We're going to sell you liquefied natural gas, and you're going to get a pipeline into Italy from the Mediterranean. And more importantly, you could supply, as you just did 5, 7, 10 years ago, your own half of your own natural gas and oil if you'll just frack. And so we have the ability to do it. It's just the willpower. And now it's a matter of how long can Ukraine last. And but it didn't have to be this way. When Joe Biden came into office and just slashed our oil and gas production, and then we had this printed $4 or $5 trillion, and did not send offensive weapons to Ukraine, then I think this was inevitable.
As you mentioned, the Chinese Communist government is also watching, and it just actually proved that Putin and the leader in the CCP, they coordinated when he will invade Ukraine. That's after the Winter Olympics. So what do you make of it?
Well, I think China's telling Russia that Russia wouldn't have gone in had China said no. So China said, when you go in, we will have the financial wherewithal to support you if you sell us oil and gas, and they're going to do that. It's obvious. And then China said, we're going to try to, veto it in the General Assembly the Security Council, so there will be no UN action against you. But the Chinese are not stupid. They're very brilliant people, the communist Chinese. So what they're saying is, but we're not going to go any further now because we're going to watch how the world reacts to it. I don't think they expected this reaction, because what they were eventually saying is, we're watching how they would react to us when we go into Taiwan, which they plan to do. And they're saying, my gosh, all of our oligarchs could suffer the same fate, and we might not have access to things like ATM or air travel. We have students all over Europe, the United States. This is something we have to ponder. And we don't know quite what the strategy is that the Ukrainians are using, but if it becomes an insurgency, and with these new sophisticated weapons, you can nullify, tanks and multi-million-dollar helicopters and air bombers or fighters. They're thinking we've got to absorb this, digest it, because this could be a paradigm or a model for Taiwan that we hadn't anticipated.
Yeah, so right now, both the Biden's administration's delegation and former State of Secretary Pompeo's delegations are all in Taiwan. So how do you think, this type of a reaction, would be taken by the Chinese side?
Yeah, I think what they're trying to do is they're telling the Taiwanese, and the Taiwanese are telling the Americans. I think they're having very explicit discussions, and they're saying things like, we want 20,000, 30,000 Javelin anti-tank weapons, and we're going to train local neighborhood groups how to use them, a nation in arms if we have to. And we want Stinger missiles, hundreds of thousands of them. And we want to know exactly what the financial repercussions on China will be if they attack us. And we want an explicit coordinated strategy. And we want this much aid from Australia, this much from Japan, this much from South. So I think that's what they're talking about. And they see glimmers of hope in Ukraine, but they're also afraid, the Taiwanese are afraid that if Putin smashes and destroys the Ukrainian resistance and he puts a puppet government in, and it ends up like Chechnya, then the world in a very sick way will have admiration for him. I don't mean moral admiration, but admiration in the sense of wonder at his strength. They'll say, oh my God, you can't resist him. The Ukrainians tried everything, he just slaughtered them. And if he tells us we have to buy gas, we should do it. And if he says NATO cannot have offensive weapons in their state, we better do it. It'll just be the opposite of what we see now. So that's why Putin has everything. He's gambled everything. He has to win. If he doesn't win, he's in bad shape.
There's also another question. People wondering, how does this war play into the Great Reset? How do you think?
Yeah. Well, the Great Reset was in Switzerland under Klaus Schwab was this idea that all the elites of the world were going to come together and meet in places like Davos, and then insist that corporations and governments adopt their agenda, which was, diversity, equity, inclusion, green energy, and ecumenical government that would transcend national legislatures. And I think everybody says, well, wait a minute. Look at the UN right now. The UN is being chaired by Vladimir Putin. How can you put any trust in a transnational organization when he's the problem, and yet he's in the UN? And they say, the WHO wasn't very helpful. They were in the pocket of the Chinese. And then people said, well, Anthony Blinken invited in the UN Commission on Human Rights to adjudicate whether America was racist after George Floyd. So they don't have a very good reputation. And I think most people will think we got to be more nationalistic. We have to be more patriotic. We cannot surrender our choices or the realm of options we have, or sovereignty to a transnational body. And I think the Great Reset is dead. And it's gone the way of Hillary Clinton's Russian reset.
Any last word you would like to tell our audience about, what's going on right now?
Well, I think it's kind of also a referendum on westernized countries that believe in market capitalism and constitutional government and have created so much affluence and leisure that they have been ridiculed for being soft. And we'll see whether they are, because Putin believes in old-fashioned hard power, and his answer to us is, I don't care what you do. I don't care how many people die. I'm going to send these tanks and these planes, and they're going to do a lot of damage. And then, I'm going to present you with a fait accompli. I took Ukraine. What are you going to do about it? And if that were to win, then I think Iran and Taiwan would be, Iran and China would be very emboldened. But on the other hand, if the West rallies to the Ukrainian side, swarms it with money and supplies and weapons, and the Ukrainians hold out, and Putin is humiliated, and the world really has been able to figure out financially how to destroy him, then the Chinese are saying, well, I know we're a lot more powerful than Putin, but we're also more vulnerable because we're more integrated within the Western fiscal system. We don't have 7,000 nukes like Putin does. So that it will send a strong message to communist China that and I think Xi will be a little bit more apprehensive that if people already feel that he's trying to follow a Putin trajectory and alienating the West and asserting overtly Chinese power, unilaterally, I think a lot of people will say, you know what, we can't do this. It's going to lead to it's going to lead to bankruptcy. It's going to we're going to be ostracized, or the Taiwanese will kill 10, 20, 30,000 of us just on the beaches. So there's a lot at stake.
Great. Thank you, Professor Hanson, for your insights.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's Professor Victor Davis Hanson. I only had that period of time to talk to him. Actually, there are more questions to discuss. So actually, one of our viewers on Safe Chat, Patrick, forwarded one of the most recent Professor Hanson's article on on the war. It's called "The Crowded Road to Kyiv." It's a brilliant article. So if you're interested, I can just paste the link over there. You can, take a look, read about it. He really analyzed all different factors relates to this war. So how do you think? Please leave your comments there, and so we'll be happy to just read them and discuss. So
Yeah. Okay. So do you want to leave any comment? And what's your opinion? This is just the war is capturing virtually everybody's attention, and that has been pretty much the case. And so we've been following that.
I saw Blue Crow said nationalists and globalists are versus globalists. It's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Professor Hanson said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Louis said, we the people as a united group have the power to defeat the Great Reset and demand we fix the corruption of our political system. Right?
Yeah. So
I think we saw this a lot in the past week at CPAC. A lot of people, especially as we shared with you, especially the veterans, the moms and grandmas, they all step up, just trying to do different things, including running for office and doing the education work, especially at the school district level. So a lot of people are awakening and also taking actions.
Yeah. So to summarize what we learned from CPAC, Cathy has already mentioned a good number of them. I summarized them in 5 points. Okay. The first one is that there were way more media than last year, same time last year, well, indicating that the relevance or the weight of the CPAC. The second is, there are many more Chinese Americans than what we saw last year, and most of them are our viewers.
Yeah, and I wanted to share with you. I interviewed a couple of them. One of them, she wrote to me again, actually in text today.
Okay.
Yeah, and she was saying, I asked her why she come to CPAC like for the first time, right? And she said that basically, from coming from mainland China and all the way to here in the United States, her journey has always been, she summarized it as following the light. Following the light.
Okay.
Yeah. And even including how she found out our Chinese shows, and that's part of her following the light. So that kind of summarize, I think, for her, it's one of example of Chinese Americans, the immigrants, who are just from the dark society under the communist regime. They have a natural instinct. People have this natural instinct to seek for freedom, seeking for lights and hope. And so it's a kind of really moving to hear from what they have to say, and hopefully in the future we can share how they feel with you guys as well.
Yeah. Okay, so besides the Chinese American, more of them attending CPAC, the 3 other things, phenomenon, okay, or takeaways that are the following. Okay, first is what Cathy just said. Many veterans is coming out and then jumping into the race for the congressional seats. And one example that Cathy interviewed is a 72-year-old black army colonel, okay, who fought. Which war did he fight? He fought he went to Venezuela for 2 times, right?
Venezuela is not her.
Okay.
Not him. Yeah, I interviewed quite a few of them. So
colonel. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, but he's a 72-year-old, and then he made a determination to jump into the race in the district in Florida. Another colonel is a lieutenant colonel of the Air Force, and he was he went to Venezuela for 2 times, right?
Right.
And then again, he also jumped into the race, and so we interviewed quite a few of them. So, and they are smart, they are sharp, and they are clear-minded. So that's what we have observed through our interview. And the fourth takeaway is, as Cathy just said, moms. Okay, like a Mom for America was growing very fast. They're very outspoken. They're very proactive. And the approach that they take is that we need to educate our kids, make them thinking clear. And to do that, we have to educate our moms, the mothers. And so Governor, I think not the governor, Governor Newen, Governor Newen of the South Dakota made a speech saying that if you anger a mom, like a mom bear, okay, you are in trouble. She's gonna tear you apart. So basically, American moms are waking up and they are taking very decisive actions, including like creating a number of courses, right? Every week for the mom of the neighborhood, come in, have a group study, and then learn and watch that courses, which has to do with the U.S. Constitution, the founding values of this country, and so on and so forth. The fifth takeaway is the school district. Believe it or not, school district across the nation. Okay, people are coming out and run for school district commissioner. Okay, and then Mike Pompeo, the state secretary, said, former state secretary said he has been traveling to 4 states in that week of the CPAC, and he said, I'm helping parents who do not even know where does the school district committee meeting happen, when and where they have those meetings, and they are jumping in and run for school district commissioners.
Yeah, so especially when we tell people we from San Francisco, and everybody basically just will mention this San Francisco school board recall. So it really became national news. And in the meanwhile, actually in Silicon Valley right now, another school board recall effort is ongoing, which is happening in the city of Cupertino. Very small city. It's a very affluent city in the middle of the Silicon Valley with 60% of Asian Americans. And I just heard that those parents are very encouraged by what happened in San Francisco, and they just had been fed up by what the school board has been doing. I think a lot relates to the close of the schools, which they also find out that there could be some kind of a collusion between the school board members with the property development companies. So yeah, I will find out more and maybe just share with our audience here. But yes, school board and the parents, they are really waking up and trying to their efforts to do to change the course.
Yeah, and then now their message is that if we are able to do this in San Francisco, we can do this in any city in this country.
Right.
And here, Luis Fernandez, you said, I want to know more about the Chinese lady with 8 kids and how while being silenced may not be the exception. Actually, as a matter of fact, due to the war that happened in Europe, the Ukrainian war, and a lot of attention was shifted away. Okay. However, people are not forgetting that lady. So there are still a lot of calls saying that let's go back, let's shed a light on it. And the regime actually releases, I don't know whether we reported this, the 5th report. The 5th, which is supposed to be the final report, this is from the provincial level, and completely just lie about what they investigated. So, and one activist was saying that the government regime managed to make sure that no single person would believe their report, their investigative report. This is how damaging, their handling of this aid kit adopted lady.
Yeah,
and
but
has done
actually-
to the reputation of the CCP.
Yeah, but actually, there has been reports. It's not really a single case, right? It really reveals the issue of the human trafficking in China, which is not really known to outside world. Yeah, so
Yeah.
probably we will do more research
Yeah.
and
I'll follow through with
follow
that.
through with you.
And the real truth, Sherry, you wrote, I'm glad to hear San Francisco star standing up. Yes, yeah, I think a lot of people would feel that way. And
Sherry also said, thank you, Wei Cathy, Victor, honest reporting. I appreciate your time you're out into your work.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sherry. We're humbled to hear that.
Yeah, and yesterday, actually, noted 2 days ago, I was in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay, I was checking out a office building there, and I was asking the building owner, saying that, why do you buy this building here? And he said, because the city has greater potential. The only problem is it is run by just extra leftist, radical leftist, and then there's a lot of ruins there. And so I asked him, how do you fix that? He said, just wait. The pendulum will swing to the extreme, and people wake up. They're gonna come back and put the right person into the mayor's position. He said, just only take one mayor to make all the difference.
Okay,
Actually, really?
I interviewed a candidate who's running for Maryland governor. Actually, so it's quite interesting. So, we'll share that with you later.
Yeah, and Lucy said, yes, Wei, but what is your Chinese audience saying? Are Chinese people waking up? Let me see. I try to understand your point here. Okay. Well, I hear the message of the left, and it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right that your inner voice confirming what you know is wrong. Have faith. Yeah, sure. And what is our Chinese audience saying? Are Chinese people waking up? Yes. Yeah. Mainly, this is how I see it. Okay. For Chinese people outside of China, they're waking up by big number, but still inside China, because of the tight control, the grip of the CCP's propaganda, they just own everything. Their media report, okay, in the so-called professional media was just unbelievable. They just lie. They lie just like there's no truth in the world. They just make things up. Unbelievable. Yeah. We did not prepare for that, but this is what the Chinese people in China is subjecting to. They're just living, facing a false world. They're just living in that kind of bubble and thinking what they should not be thinking about. But that's because the virtual reality.
Yeah, and that's why the free media, the information, a free flow of information to China is so important.
Yeah.
And that's actually what our Sound of Hope media initially established to do that, and continuously been doing that for the past almost 20 years. Yeah, right.
Okay. Yes.
So we would appreciate anyone's support in our efforts in doing that. It's not known to a lot of people, but as you know, just like I think in this Ukraine war, right, the invasion, when people saw the wills of the Ukrainians, how they determined to defend their country, their land, their freedom, then the outside world, really have more confidence in this, right? So, but in China, unfortunately, the Chinese government just had so much grab on the propaganda machine, and thus, they really control a lot of people's mind and the thinking. And media like us try to just, make our best effort to help with people to be able to receive the free information, and as a first step to, just get them be able to, get away from the CCP's grab and control.
Okay, so that will be all today, and thank you for being with us. Actually, let me see.
Oh, yeah, Louis asked a question. What's the relationship between the Klaus Schwab of Great Reset and the Chinese Communist Party? Do you have any information on that?
Let me see. What is the relationship between?
Yeah, the Davos.
Oh yeah, between that and to be honest, this is my point of view. I just want to share with you, and if you disagree, that's okay. Just type up there so that I can see it. I see two parallel different line of communism. Okay, one is the Russia, the Soviet Union, and the CCP, and the North Korea, and Cuba, and Venezuela, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's one line. Okay, and then another line, the parallel runs from Germany, and then just Frankfurt Society, then to Columbia University, and then to the U.S., which is leading to the socialist policy today. Those two versions of communism, they do not collaborate. Okay, why? Because they are, how to say, totalitarian in nature. They exclude. They are exclusive. So when they meet, they fight. All right, this is how I see the two versions of communism. It's not like they are both communism, so they collaborate. Yes, they collaborate sometimes. Okay, but largely they don't. They stay as their own entities and try to grab the power. Of course, the second version, they try to grab the power in the Western world. In the first version, it's represented by the CCP. They try to dominate the world. So they also clash and they fight each other. This is how I see it. So in that sense, the Great Reset is not CCP's agenda. CCP has its own agenda. So it's just two versions running there. And I think this Russia and Ukrainian war is one reflection of that. Putin waged the war because he wants to recover or rebuild the great, Russia empire. And then on this very issue, and Xi Jinping supported him. The CCP supported him. So he's with the first line, even though Putin is not a communist today, but he's lining up with communist China. And by invading Ukrainian, that just upset the West, including the, as I said, the second version of the, Western socialist and the communist. So they also fight them. Okay, so it's not necessarily they're both communism, they're just join hand together. This is how I see it. Okay.
Okay, as a U.S. Lawyer said that the Chinese government is more honest than Western government, which is a veritable empire of lies. China is the future, the West is the past. Free speech in West is an illusion. What do you think?
I understand what you mean. U.S. lawyer, but Chinese government. I think what you mean to say is they lie and they are blatant. But they're both bad version of the communism, very bad. They are in their genes that are the same. If they got power, the liberty is gone, and the people will be treated in a very, very brutal way. And
but I would say the Chinese government actually would, they have more experience. It exists for a longer time, and I think it can be considered as the master of the liar.
Yeah,
that's
really
in my own personal opinion.
Really, the master of liar.
Yeah, and if you think what we're experiencing right now is bad, go to China.
Mm-hmm. And I hate CCP. You wrote that. So even if we destroy CCP, we still have communism to deal with. Yes, if you ask my honest opinion, yes. So CCP is one version of communism, as I said. It's different from the radical left in the Western world, which is equals to the second version of communism. Okay, there's two versions that we're dealing with, unfortunately. All right, but again, I think truth will prevail. Truth would prevail. So the truth will bring down CCP and will bring down the second version of communism too. We just need to be patient and be persistent and be strong and be faithful and be optimistic.
Yeah, and probably also always keep, alarm, because we don't, it won't say, okay, the CCP is gone and then go with the communism. Probably not. So it's a constant fight, probably. But the CCP is really really a very evil version of the communism.
If the CCP, falls, I think generally the communism will be weakened significantly. Yeah.
Yeah, and lastly, I saw from a Real Truth, Sherry has a question. So, do they televise your show in China? I wish the citizens the best. So, our show in the radio, it actually broadcasts through the shortwave and the internet. But the Chinese government won't just easily let our shows go in. But people have a way to listen via the shortwave, and if they can use like a VPN, some tools break through the Great Firewall. On the other hand, our video shows on like YouTube and other platform, when people again in China, they have ways to break through the Great Firewall, and yes, many of them are watching our shows.
And I heard CCP said, truth will prevail. That's what my grandpa thought 70 years ago, though, have been waiting for a while. Yes, I understand. I do understand. Good people feel too long. The world's too dark. But this is a special period of time, okay? In Buddhism, if you want to listen, hear my sharing, it's called the Dharma ending time. This is a period of time that indeed there's a lot of bad things happen. But in Chinese, we know this 物极必反. When the bad thing go to extreme, good thing appear. Good thing come through. So in the Western culture, it's called the pendulum. Pendulum phenomenon. Okay, it's gonna swim back. Okay, but yes, that's. But the truth is always the most valuable and important. Weapon or value. We really need to stay with that. Yeah. Have faith. Sometimes having faith means a lot of test. And this is one of the really serious tests, whether we can hold on to our faith or we just give up. Okay, go with the flow. Do whatever. No need to stay with being truthful, being honest, being kind and being strong. No, that's the test. Let's just stay strong, stay faithful, and wait for a bit more long time. The good will always prevail over evil.
Yeah, and also in this process, it's probably a test for the faith and for the morality. Yeah, so can people still keep moral, right? Keep moral values and its faith in the good principles.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for staying with us, and until next Monday.
Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Have a great night. A great weekend. And hope you can relax. We'll see you next Monday.
Yeah, it's great to have you, and please share our video if you can.
And then press the like if you haven't done so, and a subscription, making sure you stay subscribed. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.